First off, I want to thank you all for the amazing support you've shown to the podcast. If you haven't already, please subscribe to Most Advanced Featured and Accurate Quick Podcast Summaries on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, and YouTube. It will save you from spending 15 to 20 hours per week catching up. It's a great way to stay informed while saving time for less than the price of candy in most places. Here's a rundown on how to unlock your potential, motivation, and unique abilities, featuring Dr. Adam Grant by Andrew Huberman. Andrew Huberman welcomed Dr. Adam Grant to the Huberman Lab podcast, where they discussed science and science-based tools for everyday life.
Dr. Grant, a professor of organizational psychology at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, has authored 5 best-selling books, including his latest, Hidden Potentially.
The conversation followed with Dr. Huberman expressing his enthusiasm for discussing peer-reviewed studies and tools that can help people meet their goals and overcome significant challenges. Dr. Huberman introduced Dr. Grant, highlighting his impressive background and expertise.
He mentioned that Dr. Grant has a bachelor's degree from Harvard University and a doctorate from the University of Michigan.
Dr. Huberman also noted that Dr. Grant has written extensively on various topics, including procrastination, which is a subject that Dr. Huberman is particularly interested in. The conversation started with Dr. Huberman sharing his personal experience with deadlines. He confessed that he loves deadlines because they help him focus and eliminate distractions. Dr. Huberman asked Dr. Grant about procrastination, wondering why some people complete tasks well in advance, while others procrastinated.
Dr. Grant responded by sharing his own experience with procrastination, revealing that he is a precrastinator who finishes tasks early but procrastinates on administrative tasks. Dr. Grant explained that people procrastinate because they are avoiding negative emotions associated with a task, such as boredom, fear, or anxiety.
He asked Dr. Huberman to identify the emotion that causes him to procrastinate, but Dr. Huberman replied that he doesn't consider himself a procrastinator. Instead, he loves deadlines because they create a sense of time pressure, which helps him focus. Dr. Grant noted that Dr. Huberman's approach is not procrastination, but rather a strategy to simulate the deadline and create a sense of excitement and focus. Dr. Huberman agreed, explaining that he enjoys the process of preparing for a task or event, and the pressure of a deadline helps him get into the right mindset.
The conversation continued with Dr. Grant sharing his insights on procrastination, revealing that it's not about being lazy or undisciplined, but rather about avoiding negative emotions. He also discussed the importance of understanding the underlying emotions that drive procrastination in order to develop effective strategies to overcome it.
Dr. Huberman and Dr. Grant also talked about the relationship between procrastination and creativity.
Dr. Grant mentioned that procrastination can sometimes be a necessary step in the creative process, as it allows individuals to incubate ideas and make new connections.
Throughout the conversation, Dr. Huberman and Dr. Grant shared their personal experiences and insights, providing a nuanced understanding of procrastination and its relationship to creativity and productivity. The discussion was filled with humor and wit, making it an engaging and entertaining listen. He likens the process of finding valuable information to a miner searching for gems, and the excitement of discovery is what drives him.
Dr. Adam Grant chimes in, saying he has a similar experience, and that the unleashed curiosity and rush of discovery are what make the process enjoyable.
He also notes that Andrew's process doesn't qualify as procrastination, as he sees a benefit in taking his time to prepare. Andrew Huberman explains that his process often begins much earlier than the physical process, and that he's constantly thinking about his work, even when he's doing mundane tasks like taking out the recycle. He uses a method of capture to jot down ideas that come to him throughout the day and filters out what's useful later.
Dr. Adam Grant shares that he's adopted a similar process where he lets ideas incubate for a few weeks before committing to them. The conversation then turns to the topic of procrastination and creativity. Dr. Adam Grant explains that research has shown that moderate procrastination can actually fuel creativity, as it allows for incubation and the development of novel ideas. However, chronic procrastination can lead to tunnel vision and a lack of creativity.
Andrew Huberman notes that the relationship between procrastination and creativity is an inverted U-shaped curve, with moderate procrastination being the sweet spot.
Dr. Adam Grant shares an experiment where participants were given a task to complete, but were also tempted with entertaining YouTube videos. He explains that this is because moderate procrastination allows for the incubation of ideas and the development of novel connections between seemingly unrelated concepts. The conversation then turns to the topic of intrinsic motivation and performance.
Andrew Huberman shares his experience of using self-deception to become interested in topics he initially found boring.
Dr. Adam Grant notes that intrinsic motivation is critical for creativity and performance, and that it's not always reflexive. He explains that we can nurture intrinsic motivation by designing tasks that are engaging, using reward systems, and persuading ourselves to become interested in a topic. Dr. Adam Grant also touches on the Stanford study, which showed that rewarding kids for things they were already intrinsically motivated to do can actually undermine their motivation. He notes that this is because extrinsic rewards can crowd out intrinsic motivation, leading to a decrease in performance. He fell in love with the process of learning how to do things, and this is reflected in his approach to self-persuasion. He believes that convincing someone else is often the best way to convince oneself, and this is backed up by research on cognitive dissonance.
Andrew Huberman is fascinated by this idea and asks Dr. Grant to elaborate. He explains that the key is to find something interesting about the task, and then explain it to someone else in a way that convinces oneself. This process of self-persuasion is driven by curiosity and the desire to learn.
Dr. Grant suggests that finding a curiosity gap is a great way to get started, and he encourages his students to take their least favorite class and find a mystery or puzzle to solve.
Andrew Huberman defines curiosity as a desire to find something out without being attached to a particular outcome, and Dr. Grant agrees that this is a key aspect of curiosity. He also notes that there is no cure for curiosity, and that's a good thing. The conversation turns to the topic of motivation, and Andrew Huberman asks about the role of extrinsic rewards in motivating people.
Dr. Grant explains that while extrinsic rewards can be effective in motivating quantity, they are not as effective in motivating quality. He also notes that extrinsic rewards can undermine intrinsic motivation, but this can be mitigated if people are given autonomy and a sense of control.
The conversation also touches on the topic of nutrition and mental health, and Andrew Huberman talks about the importance of getting enough vitamins and minerals from high-quality sources. He also mentions that he drinks AG1, a nutritional supplement that provides all of his foundational nutritional needs.
In terms of practical applications, Dr. Grant suggests that if someone is dreading a task, they should try to find a question that they need to resolve, and then go about answering it.
Andrew Huberman asks about the value of extrinsic rewards in motivating kids and adults. And Dr. Grant explains that while extrinsic rewards can be effective, they should be used carefully to avoid undermining intrinsic motivation. He also notes that autonomy and a sense of control are key in mitigating the negative effects of extrinsic rewards. Rewards should be symbols of appreciation and value, not carrots to control people's behavior. When framed this way, it's easier for people to say they want the reward, but they're not only doing the task for that reward. Andrew Huberman notes that when people focus on extrinsic rewards, they're not present in the task. They're thinking about the outcome, not the process. He wonders if there's data to support the idea that when people are physically and mentally present, they perform better and enjoy the task more.
Dr. Adam Grant agrees, explaining that intrinsic motivation is useful for performance because it allows for focus of attention, making it easier to find flow. When people enjoy what they're doing, they're less likely to give up in the face of obstacles and are more likely to think about the task when they're not doing it.
Andrew Huberman shares his personal struggle with wanting to share valuable information on social media, but deliberately delaying it to continue enjoying the learning process. He notes that social media can be a double-edged blade, allowing people to share information quickly, but also taking them out of the rewarding experience.
Dr. Adam Grant agrees, sharing that he feels torn between enjoying the world and improving it. He notes that social media and smartphones have made it difficult to concentrate, with people checking email an average of 72 times a day. This constant self-interruption erodes joy and makes it hard to accomplish anything. Dr. Adam Grant mentions a study by Leslie Perlow who implemented a quiet time policy where engineers had uninterrupted time on certain days. The result was a 65% increase in productivity.
Andrew Huberman notes that this protocol could be applied to any task, allowing people to focus on their primary purpose.
Dr. Adam Grant agrees, suggesting that setting boundaries and collectively committing to them is important. The conversation turns to chronotypes, with Dr. Adam Grant wondering if people should protect the first few hours and last few hours of the day for deep work, and do core meetings and interactions in the middle. He suggests that the post-lunch dip in autonomic arousal can be partially offset by delaying morning caffeine, and that being less alert can lead to more focus. He found himself easily distracted, especially with multiple screens in front of him. He wasn't listening to the conversation at hand, and his mind began to wander. This led him to think about the reduction in autonomic arousal, and how it might support the idea that creative work and brainstorming are best accomplished in the late afternoon. He recalled his experience teaching university lectures in the evening, where he noticed that students were more relaxed and had less social anxiety. He attributed this to an increase in GABA transmission that occurs late in the evening.
Andrew Huberman's conversation turned to the topic of creativity and the best times for IT.
Dr. Adam Grant mentioned that there's evidence that early birds do more creative work in the morning, and that energy levels lead to more divergent thinking.
However, Andrew Huberman believed that it's individual, and that liminal states between sleep and waking might be more conducive to creative thinking. He mentioned that people often have ideas in the shower, while running, or while falling asleep, and that he carries a notebook to jot down ideas that come to him in the morning. The conversation turned to the topic of deliberate tactics that highly creative people use to bring about ideas. Andrew Huberman mentioned that Rick Rubin and Carl Dieserath, both highly creative individuals, use different approaches to stimulate their creativity. Rick Rubin likes to get very still and think in complete sentences, while Carl Dieserath forces himself to think in deliberate senses. Andrew Huberman was fascinated by these approaches and wanted to study them further.
He proposed a collaboration with Dr. Adam Grant to study the neural mechanisms behind these creative processes. Dr. Adam Grant suggested that individual differences might play a role in what needs to be stable or steady for creativity to occur. He thought that people with naturally quiet minds might need to jolt themselves out of that state with lots of access to free-ranging thoughts.
Andrew Huberman agreed and proposed a study to look at resting network activation in people who are completely still and forcing themselves to think in deliberate senses, and compare it to those who are in motion but quieting their minds. The conversation turned to the topic of filtering ideas and judging their quality. Andrew Huberman asked Dr. Adam Grant how he copes with not placing a judge on his ideas, which can lead to false negatives and wiping out great ideas. He asks for a 0 to 10 score and uses that as a calibration mechanism to refine his ideas. He emphasized the importance of having a built-in mechanism for learning and being open to feedback from others. Andrew Huberman took a break to thank his sponsor, InsideTracker, a personalized nutrition platform that analyzes data from blood and DNA to help people understand their bodies and reach their health goal. He mentioned that he's a believer in getting regular blood work done, and that InsideTracker makes it easy to understand the information and take action. He offered a discount code for listeners to try InsideTracker. Instead of going to just 1 or 2 people and getting defensive, it's better to get feedback from a large group of people. This helps to filter out the idiosyncratic comments and focus on the quality issues that multiple people have identified. Andrew Huberman recalls a time when he was a postdoc and received negative feedback on a manuscript from a senior colleague. This experience taught him that sometimes negative feedback can be inverted and used to improve the work. When seeking feedback, it's essential to filter out the positive versus negative comments. A meta-analysis by Kluger and Denisi found that the utility of feedback is not driven by whether it's positive or negative, but by whether it focuses on the task or the self.
Adam Grant suggests that instead of asking for feedback, it's better to ask for advice on how to improve. This helps to get actionable suggestions that can be used to learn and grow. One technique for taking constructive criticism is to use the second score method, which involves evaluating oneself on how well they took the feedback. This helps to focus on the future and what can be done to improve, rather than getting defensive about the past. Adam Grant shares a personal story about how he used this technique when he received brutal feedback on a teaching session he gave to Air Force generals and colonels. He took the feedback seriously, acknowledged his mistakes, and adjusted his approach for the next session, which received much better feedback.
Andrew Huberman appreciates the concept of the second score and the personal example that Adam Grant shared. He notes that it's easy to get defensive when receiving negative feedback, but using the second score method can help to take control of the process and focus on improvement. The conversation highlights the importance of seeking feedback, filtering out the noise, and using it to learn and grow. This is all about taking control of the slope of the line from the 3 onward, and it's really a forward-looking perspective. It's not about being unduly psychological or analytic, but rather about taking a moment's state and a noun and turning it into a verb. The idea of focusing on verbs rather than nouns is something that's been discussed a lot in the context of growth mindset.
Dr. Adam Grant mentions that he's reminded of a great philosopher, Homer Simpson, who said that verbing weirds language. But in all seriousness, verbs are active, and we're drawn to them. But what we should be doing instead is saying, okay, the purpose of getting feedback or advice is not to shame my past self. It's to educate my future self. This is all connected to the work on growth mindset, which suggests that we should be focusing on the idea that our abilities can be developed through hard work and dedication.
But as Andrew Huberman points out, it's not always easy to implement this mindset in real time. There are often additional tools and strategies that can help make growth mindset more accessible and effective. One of the key findings in the research on growth mindset is that it's more important in circumstances where people are more likely to need it. For example, kids who are impoverished or marginalized communities may benefit more from the message that they are capable of evolving their skills. But it's not just about instilling this idea in someone's head. The context around them really matters. The classroom culture and the teacher's beliefs about their students' abilities can have a big impact on whether or not growth mindset is effective.
Dr. Adam Grant talks about the idea of scaffolding, which is the idea that when you're trying to improve at something, you don't need a permanent teacher or mentor. What you need is someone who can give you temporary support to help you scale to a new height. This can be a really effective way to help people put their growth mindset into practice. But what about when it comes to our jobs? Can we apply the principles of growth mindset to our work? Dr. Adam Grant says that yes, we can. In fact, research has shown that when people are taught to think about their jobs as flexible building blocks, rather than fixed job descriptions, they can experience a sustainable boost to their happiness that lasts at least 6 months. This is because they're able to redesign their own job to be more enjoyable, without a drop in the effectiveness of their contributions to their workplace.
Andrew Huberman suggests that this is like adding a S to growth mindset. It's not just about individual growth, but also about the interconnectedness of the context in which we're growing.
Dr. Adam Grant agrees and says that this is what he calls a dual mindset. It's not just about giving people the opportunity to grow, but also about giving them the chance to bust through the walls that are holding them back. Dr. Adam Grant talks about his research on the relationship between intrinsic motivation and performance on other tasks. He found that having a deep interest in one thing might not be the best condition for performing well at other less interesting tasks. This is because when we're really passionate about something, we can get so focused on it that we neglect other areas of our lives. But when we're able to balance our intrinsic motivation with a sense of purpose and meaning, we can actually perform better across the board. The conversation followed with a challenge to explore the dark side of intrinsic motivation, which led to a study on how passionate people are on one task can affect their performance on another, often leading to a decrease in performance on the less enjoyable task. This discovery has influenced the way one structures their day, starting with a moderately interesting task to warm up before moving on to more exciting ones, and saving the boring but important tasks for when performance is less likely to suffer. An interesting anecdote about a musician who practices a menial task after a performance to bring himself back down to earth has sparked a discussion on the importance of contrast effects in our daily lives. This practice, known as tapering, helps to reset one's frame of reference, making everyday tasks seem more manageable. The conversation has also touched on the idea that having some mundane experiences can actually heighten our level of satisfaction for the things we enjoy, as it keeps our expectations grounded and allows us to be pleasantly surprised by tasks that are more interesting than expected. The concept of momentum has also been explored, where the energy and excitement from one experience can carry over into other tasks, making them seem more enjoyable. However, this can also lead to a cliff effect, where the contrast between a great experience and a boring one can be extreme. The tension between contrast and spillover effects is a topic that requires further exploration. The discussion has also delved into the importance of segmenting away from negative experiences using strategies such as distraction and reframing. A diving coach's approach to reframing a bad practice by focusing on the slope of improvement rather than the level of performance has been highlighted as an effective way to manage negative thought spirals. The conversation has also touched on the impact of smartphones on our mental health, with the constant bombardment of information being both a boon and a disruption to our positive psychology. He only picks up his phone when he has something specific to post or wants to see comments and respond. He keeps his to-do and to-don't lists on a Word document on his computer, not on his phone, as he finds that most of his good thinking and writing happens on the computer screen.
Andrew Huberman also prefers to take notes by hand, using a notebook and pen, rather than on his phone. He believes that writing down ideas by hand helps with memory retention and recall. He's also a fan of the reflective best self exercise, which involves asking people who know you well to share stories about times when you were at your best. This helps identify invisible strengths and areas where you excel, which can be just as valuable as recognizing weaknesses. The concept of blind spots is also discussed, with Andrew Huberman noting that the "I'm not biased" bias is a particularly problematic one. This bias can prevent people from recognizing their own biases and flaws, making it difficult to overcome them. He suggests that recognizing that everyone has blind spots is the first step to addressing them, and that seeking feedback from others can be a powerful way to gain insight into your strengths and weaknesses. Andrew Huberman shares a personal example of how he used the reflective best self exercise to discover his own strengths and weaknesses. He received feedback from others that he was good at helping people see their strengths, and he realized that he didn't have enough opportunities to use this strength in his daily life. The conversation also touches on Andrew Huberman's academic career and how he came to realize his passion for sharing knowledge with others. He notes that he didn't always feel like he had original ideas, but rather that he was good at synthesizing and integrating the ideas of others. However, his students encouraged him to share his own research and ideas, which ultimately led him to write his own book. This experience taught him the importance of recognizing his own strengths and weaknesses and how to use them to make a positive impact.
Adam recalled a conversation with Mark Breedlove, who mentioned that review articles written by credentialed individuals in a given field are cited at 100 times the rate of any one particular paper. However, Adam never paid much attention to impact factors, believing that intrinsic curiosity and a passion for discovery are what truly drive innovation.
Andrew Huberman then chimed in, sharing his own experiences with synthesizing information and the feeling of satisfaction that comes with it.
He praised Adam's work in helping people identify and erase their blind spots, particularly in the context of interpersonal relations in the workplace or at home.
Andrew noted that people who exert a lot of control in their professional lives often bring that same mindset to their personal relationships, which can be detrimental. The conversation then shifted to the topic of blind spots and how people can benefit from understanding and doing the opposite of what they normally do. Andrew introduced the concept of preacher, prosecutor, and politician modes of thinking, which can be adaptive in certain roles but ultimately prevent people from questioning their own assumptions and beliefs. He confessed that his biggest vice is prosecutor mode, which can lead to being a logic bully.
Adam reflected on his own experiences with being a logic ninja, a mode that can be effective in certain domains but less so in others.
Andrew emphasized the importance of thinking like a scientist, having humility, and being open to new knowledge. He noted that when people are taught to think like scientists, their judgment and decision-making improve. The discussion then turned to the topic of how to help people think more scientifically, even in domains where they don't have access to scientific knowledge.
Adam shared his goal of teaching people science and scientific thinking, while also providing health tools and protocols. He emphasized the importance of posing a hypothesis and trying to disprove it, rather than simply seeking confirmation bias.
Andrew highlighted the importance of recognizing that blind spots are invisible to us and that other people's input is crucial in helping us see them more clearly. He suggested that everyone on social media should follow people they disagree with, not just for the sake of it, but to surround themselves with people who challenge their thought process. They emphasize the need to be open to new ideas, challenge our assumptions, and surround ourselves with people who can help us grow and learn. Andrew Huberman mentions that he fundamentally disagrees with some ideas, but he's trying to learn and understand what others find intriguing about them. He's a learner, always looking to expand his knowledge. Andrew Huberman shares that he's surprised by the impact of his social media posts on his followers. He's noticed that some posts can cause people to unfollow him, even if he's careful about the content. He wonders if people are too focused on what he thinks, rather than how he thinks. He also thinks that people might not realize the foundation of evidence behind his work, leading them to question his credibility.
Dr. Adam Grant responds that he's had similar experiences. He mentions that in an academic culture, there are papers that are watertight and incredible, but also papers that are less reliable. He believes that if an idea is grounded firmly in the scientific method, it's a good starting point. However, he also acknowledges that scientists can differ in their interpretations of the same data. The conversation turns to the topic of social media and the challenges of balancing context and actionable takeaways. Dr. Adam Grant mentions that he's criticized for not being concise enough, but also for taking things out of context. He thinks it's a tightrope walk, but he's willing to keep going and learn from his mistakes.
Andrew Huberman brings up the topic of authenticity and how it's a complex issue. He thinks that people should be true to their values and principles, rather than just being authentic to their thoughts and feelings in the moment. He believes that authenticity without boundaries is careless, and authenticity without empathy is selfish.
Dr. Adam Grant agrees and mentions that he's written about the importance of etiquette in social media. He applies classroom rules to his online interactions, tolerating any comment that he would allow in a classroom. He thinks that etiquette is essential in balancing authenticity with preserving one's public and private life. The conversation continues with a discussion about the role of emotional states in communication. He thinks that it's essential to balance authenticity across the lifespan, and that young minds in particular need to be careful about what they post online.
Andrew Huberman shares a valuable piece of advice. Before posting something online, ask yourself if it would be something you'd be proud of if it were the only post someone saw. He thinks that this filter can help people be more thoughtful and considerate in their online interactions. The conversation turns to the topic of potential and how people can tap into their untapped abilities.
Dr. Adam Grant mentions that he's researched this topic extensively and has a new project in the works.
Andrew Huberman is interested in hearing more about it. He believes that everyone has hidden potential, but they don't know how to unlock it. According to him, people often underestimate their own potential because they judge themselves by their starting abilities. This is more common for people with fixed mindsets, but even people with growth mindsets can fall into this trap. Andrew shares that when he started diving, he was way too late, and he lacked most of the things that you would want as a diver. Despite these limitations, his coach, Eric, believed in him and saw more potential in him than he saw in himself. This lit a fire under Andrew, and he began to set specific, difficult goals for himself. He wanted to learn dives that seemed out of reach and increase his score over the next 3 meets. Andrew's story highlights the importance of motivation and opportunity in achieving potential. He believes that people often underestimate the role of motivation and opportunity in achieving success, and instead focus too much on raw talent. Andrew's coach, Eric, played a significant role in helping him unlock his potential. Eric saw something in Andrew that he didn't see in himself, and he encouraged him to push beyond his limitations. Andrew's experience with diving taught him that it's not performance that's motivating, but rather a sense of progress. He believes that people are driven by the desire to overcome obstacles and achieve their potential. Andrew also discusses the importance of embracing discomfort and imperfection in achieving potential. He believes that people need to become creatures of discomfort and be willing to take risks and face challenges head-on. He also emphasizes the need to be a sponge and soak up new information, while also filtering out what might not be useful. He talks about the importance of being an imperfectionist, knowing when to aim for excellence and when to settle for good.
Dr. Adam Grant shares a similar story about his struggles with neural development in college. He believes that the friction and effort he put into learning neural development made it more satisfying and enjoyable for him.
Andrew and Adam discuss the importance of embracing discomfort and imperfection in achieving potential. They believe that people need to be willing to take risks and face challenges head-on, and that perfectionism can be a recipe for burnout and depression. Andrew mentions that Thomas Curran, a leading psychologist studying perfectionism, has found that perfectionism is associated with burnout, depression, and anxiety. He believes that the antidote to perfectionism is calibration, knowing when to aim for excellence and when to settle for good.
Adam Grant shares his experience with students in his lab who are paranoid about shipping out their work for the world to see. He believes that perfectionism can hold people back from achieving their potential, and that it's essential to find a balance between striving for excellence and being willing to take risks.
Andrew and Adam's conversation highlights the importance of embracing discomfort, imperfection, and progress in achieving potential. They believe that people need to be willing to take risks, face challenges head-on, and focus on progress rather than perfection. Andrew Huberman's story about his diving experience and Adam Grant's story about his struggles with neural development illustrate the importance of motivation, opportunity, and embracing discomfort in achieving potential. They believe that people need to be willing to take risks, face challenges head-on, and focus on progress rather than perfection. Their conversation highlights the need to become creatures of discomfort, be a sponge, and be an imperfectionist to achieve one's full potential. Andrew and Adam's discussion also emphasizes the importance of calibration in achieving potential. They believe that people need to know when to aim for excellence and when to settle for good. This requires a balance between striving for perfection and being willing to take risks. Andrew mentions that Thomas Curran's research on perfectionism highlights the importance of finding this balance to avoid burnout, depression, and anxiety. They believe that people need to be willing to take risks, face challenges head-on, and focus on progress rather than perfection. Their stories and discussion highlight the need to become creatures of discomfort, be a sponge, and be an imperfectionist to achieve one's full potential. One day, Eric told him that a perfect 10 is a misnomer, and it's actually for excellence, not perfection. There's no such thing as a flawless dive. Andrew realized that he had to define the standards of excellence. As a recovering perfectionist, he learned to aim for a 9 when starting something new, like writing a book. He wants to make sure it's truly the best work he can produce. For social media posts, he's okay with a 7, but if he's only shooting for a 9, he won't post very often. Dr. Adam Grant pointed out that Andrew's ceiling for 9 is exceedingly high, and he wants it to keep getting higher over time. Andrew agreed, saying that his idea of a 9 today is much more challenging than it was 10 years ago. He thinks people, especially extreme perfectionists, don't realize that they need to figure out how important a task is and then adjust their standards accordingly. For example, if a task is trivial, a 6 might be sufficient, but if it's crucial, he'll pour his energy into making it a 9 neat.
Dr. Adam Grant shared that he went to a high school where some kids got perfect scores on the SAT, but some of them have gone on to have challenges in their current lives. He wondered if there's data on early high performance being a seed for challenges later on.
Andrew Huberman said that the data goes both ways, and while early success can be a motivator, it can also lead to complacency and competency traps. He's allergic to the idea of best practices, as it creates an illusion that you're done. He thinks that one of the things people should do when reaching their potential is to figure out what their failure budget looks like. Andrew Huberman shared that he started a podcast as a learning mechanism and he didn't know if it would work. He realized that all the pivotal moments in his career came from taking risks, and he needed to build confidence through doing it. He set a goal to start at least one project every year that didn't succeed, not aiming for failure, but creating an acceptable zone of failure to motivate risk-taking and experimenting. Dr. Adam Grant asked Andrew about the projects he's currently spinning in the back of his mind, and Andrew shared that he's thinking about creating a podcast where people can debate issues they fundamentally disagree on, like policies for trans athletes in sports. Andrew Huberman wants to moderate the discussion and explore the complexity of the issue.
He's hesitant to try it, but Dr. Adam Grant thinks it's an amazing idea and encourages him to do it.
The topic is highly controversial, but Dr. Adam Grant believes that it's exactly why Andrew should do it, as it can help people understand the complexity of the issue and find common ground. However, small panels arguing and competing can be more informative and interesting than individuals butting heads. Andrew Huberman agrees and thinks that bringing together people who are not ideologues but are interested in pragmatic policy solutions to rewrite the Constitution could be a great idea.
Dr. Adam Grant loves this idea and thinks that tackling big issues is a great way to go.
Andrew Huberman doesn't have a vested interest in what the model should be, but wants to get it right and continually evolve his beliefs. He thinks that affirming beliefs is not the way to learn, and that stretching thinking and improving the way the world works is the way to go.
Dr. Adam Grant thinks that a podcast with a tag team format discussing controversial issues could be very popular and important.
Andrew Huberman is considering trying it as an experiment on his Rethinking feed. Andrew Huberman has always thought it would be fun to try to write a sci-fi novel, but is unsure if it's a good use of his time. Dr. Adam Grant thinks it's a great idea, and that Andrew's motivation and opportunity could make it happen. Andrew Huberman loves sci-fi as a way to imagine a better world and prevent a worse one from emerging. Dr. Adam Grant is curious about research on Nobel Prize-winning scientists, and Andrew Huberman shares that they are more likely to have artistic hobbies. They are twice as likely to play a musical instrument, 7 times as likely to draw or paint, and 12 times as likely to do creative writing. Andrew Huberman was excited to learn that they are 22 times as likely to dance, act, or perform as magicians as he was a former magician.
Dr. Adam Grant shares that he saw a magician named Aussie Wind, who blew his mind with his tricks.
Andrew Huberman was a professional magician and thinks that magic informs his work now. He uses misdirection to communicate knowledge and thinks that challenging conventional wisdom and questioning assumptions is what surprises people and leads them to think. Dr. Adam Grant thinks that Andrew's approach to science communication is similar to magic, in that it creates a surprise that delights people and leads them to think. Andrew Huberman wants to figure out what we know from behavioral science that's different from most intuition, and how to explain it in a way that surprises people, but leads them to say, "Oh, that's so interesting."
Dr. Adam Grant aims for 4 things in science communication: interesting, clear, actionable, and surprising.
Andrew Huberman thinks that the surprising is the least important, but assumes that rigor is table stakes.
Dr. Adam Grant agrees and thinks that there's a reservoir of stuff that sits underneath those points as a foundation.
Andrew Huberman wants to find what's interesting, clear, actionable, and hopefully surprising, and thinks that surprise is a huge driver of interest. He references a classic article by Murray Davis, who wrote that ideas live not because they're true, but because they're interesting. Andrew Huberman thinks that beyond surprise, other factors drive interest, such as self-reflection, and wants to hear Dr. Adam Grant's thoughts on what else interests people in his content.
Dr. Adam Grant thinks that anything that draws on self-reflection is interesting, and that people have an innate desire to better understand themselves and why they work the way they do. He thinks that cast understanding on experiences of others is also interesting, and that it's a key driver of interest in his content. Narcissists have an extreme pleasure drive, but they always feel like they have less than they want, and that others have more. This realization reframes the way we think about narcissists, who are often seen as overbearing, but are actually struggling with a deficit in pleasure. Understanding this can help us navigate interactions with narcissists more effectively.
Andrew Huberman's work has shown that surprise and self-relevance are crucial in making new information impactful. When we learn something that resonates with us, it doesn't have to be actionable to be useful. It can simply help us understand ourselves or others better. This is why many popular TED Talks focus on human behavior, as people are naturally interested in understanding themselves and others. Lisa Feldman Barrett's research on emotional granularity highlights the importance of language in describing our emotions. In certain cultures, there are specific words for subcategories of emotions, which can help people feel less alone and process their emotions more quickly. This concept is closely related to the idea that name it to tame it, or affect labeling, is a powerful emotion regulation strategy. Andrew Huberman's work has also shown that understanding the neurological substrates of our thoughts, feelings, and actions can be incredibly empowering. When people learn about the mechanisms behind their emotions, they are more likely to believe in their ability to control them. This is why cognitive neuroscience is so valuable in helping us understand the human mind. The concept of languishing, or feeling unfulfilled and stagnant, is a common human experience. It's not the same as depression or burnout, but rather a state of being that is characterized by a lack of purpose and energy. Recognizing and labeling this emotion can be incredibly powerful, as it allows people to acknowledge and process their feelings. Andrew Huberman believes that languishing is a natural part of the human condition, and that it may even be evolutionarily adaptive. It can serve as a signal that something is not working, and can motivate problem-solving and growth. However, it's also important to acknowledge that languishing can be debilitating, and that it's essential to find ways to overcome it. He believes that children are naturally curious and open to learning, and that they should be encouraged to take risks and make mistakes. By promoting a growth mindset and embracing imperfection, parents can help their children develop a more positive and resilient relationship with themselves. She suggested he look for a smiling face in the audience, which not only calmed his nerves but also boosted her confidence when he asked for her advice. This experience taught him that kids need to feel like they matter, not just by being unconditionally loved, but also by feeling like they make a difference. He calls this the coach effect, where seeking guidance from others, especially children, can increase motivation and confidence. Grant's conversation with Andrew Huberman delved into the importance of kids feeling like they matter. Huberman pointed out that making kids feel important is often tied to performance metrics, which can create anxiety.
Grant emphasized that kids, like adults, want to matter, and that seeking their advice can be a powerful way to boost their confidence. The conversation also touched on the idea that realizing one's potential has a lot to do with reaching outside of one's comfort zone and exploring deeper wishes and thoughts. Grant shared his own struggles with self-limiting beliefs and how he's learned to overcome them.
Huberman praised Grant's ability to make science interesting and clear, and Grant expressed admiration for Huberman's commitment to making science accessible to everyone. The two also discussed the value of collaboration and the importance of seeking guidance from others. Grant mentioned that he's learned from Huberman's approach to problem solving and his ability to see things from different perspectives. Huberman, in turn, praised Grant's teaching style and his ability to make complex concepts simple and engaging. Throughout the conversation, both Grant and Huberman emphasized the importance of learning from each other and from their audience. They encouraged listeners to subscribe to their podcast and social media channels and to engage with their content. They also discussed the value of supplements and the importance of seeking guidance from experts in various fields. Grant, in turn, thanked Huberman for the opportunity to discuss a wide range of topics and for being a valuable resource for his audience.
Grant's parting words encourage listeners to support the podcast by subscribing to their YouTube channel, Spotify, and Apple, and by leaving a 5-star review. He also invited listeners to share their questions and comments on social media and to check out the sponsors mentioned in the episode. Grant reminded listeners that they can find him on social media platforms, including Instagram, X, Threads, LinkedIn, and Facebook, where he discusses science and science-related tools. He also encouraged listeners to subscribe to his monthly Neural Network newsletter, which includes podcast summaries and toolkits for managing various aspects of life. Thank you for tuning in. Please click follow button, and just remember, subscription is only $1 per month. Leave a comment or review. Until next time, happy listening.